Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, Google, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
and Peter.
Episode 71, recorded on May 13th, 2020. Now Open AWS Work From Home Region. Good evening, Peter, Ryan, and Jonathan. How you going?
Good evening, Justin.
Well, the week has been fun. There was a summit yesterday. I don't know if you caught that or not.
Wasn't too thrilled.
How many people showed up?
I don't know.
At least one.
At least one. I mean, I went and clicked into the web interface and I clicked around to see what it was like, and then I bailed out because I had things to do. And then Jonathan took over my duties for live tweeting it, which was fun. So how was that, Jonathan?
It was kind of lonely.
Yeah.
The only one there.
I think if there'd been some more interesting stuff to talk about, but mostly it was just a recap of how wonderful they are and some customer showcases and things. So, and they made it very clear that it was a focus on learning for the summit.
Yeah, which we kind of knew going into it. And that's part of the reason why we don't typically do predictions for summits for the exact reason, because they typically have maybe one announcement, if anything, and they're not always talked about on the main stage. And unfortunately, that's kind of what happened this time around. So we, depending on how you shake this, though, I do think I win either way. So we basically said that we were only going to cover the keynote, and then you made the argument that we should just cover the entire summit in the predictions. And so the way if I do the math on this, so if I just count the keynote, I win on COVID crazy growth numbers as out of the box, because he talked about the crazy amount of video content that Amazon was pushing related to the increase in video streaming. So I think that's a win for me on that. Now, you argued we should count the entire summit, and I said, okay, fine, we'll count that argument too. So that pulls in Macy, which they announced late in the day, about 4:45, for your improved DLP tools for S3. So I see why you did that. I do see it. You're not fooling anybody, Jonathan. But then that also brings in the price cut for EC2, S3, and networking they did.
That was before the summit started there.
Yeah, it was same time frame within 24 to 40 hours. So I feel like either way I win. That's how I see it. But I mean, what do you guys think, Peter and Ryan? As clearly you guys lost, but there's no argument about that.
I think we should start the clock right after the keynote and stop the clock right before the price cut announcement, and then we all tied 0-0.
That's fair.
There you go. Yeah. But overall, it was definitely a very sad showing for the prediction show. We missed all of our honorable mentions. Peter missed in a big way. You missed on submarines. I mean, I was so bummed about that one. And then, caricature of Larry Ellison didn't appear. There was nothing on that. And then Ryan, as much as I wanted that Docker exec-based debugging, it just didn't happen for you this time around. So sorry about that.
I'll save these predictions for reInvent.
Yeah, for a later show. Yeah. Keep them in your back pocket.
Eventually they come true.
Right? They have to.
Yeah.
I did try to give you like a really far stretch, and you were like, I can't make that argument.
Yeah,
because you have more integrity than I do. Because I said that security code scanning service similar to Code Guru. Well, they did expand Code Guru to support Bitbucket. So I was trying to give that to you, but you said you couldn't.
No, yeah, denied.
Yeah. So and then they did not mention the number of new features for the year so far. They only mentioned total number of features. So even our tiebreaker busted us out. So it was just a lot of goose eggs here on the Summit Prediction Show. So I'll take my victory and we'll move on.
Well, if Ryan's going to be a regular on the show, then he should probably get to log some predictions for the year, like we did at the beginning of the year.
Oh my God, you could predict things like a pandemic.
There's going to be a pandemic in 2020 and the world's going to go to crap. And he would win. It would be ridiculous. I mean, I hear you. I do. Maybe we'll do a second half. What else could happen this year and add to our predictions? Maybe add another 2 to each of our predictions, and then he can add 5. So I don't know.
I can also just maintain my duties as, judge, jury, and tiebreaker.
Yeah, at least until next year. Then you're on the clock.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about those new announcements real quick before we kind of get into other stuff, because we're talking about the summit first thing up here. So first of all is the enhanced Macy capabilities with Amazon Macy now available with sustainable reduced pricing. I love how they call that sustainable. Macy, of course, is a fully managed service that helps you discover and protect your sensitive data using machine learning to automatically spot and classify data for you in your S3 buckets. Apparently, Macy customers told them that there were some things they liked and some things they didn't. mostly the fact that their firstborn child was required to pay for it for any amount of reasonable data. And to address these asks, they're releasing a new version of Macy with simplified pricing and enhanced features. So now you'll be charged in a couple different dimensions. The first one being you'll be charged based on the number of S3 buckets that are evaluated and the amount of data processed for sensitive data security jobs. This new tier pricing allows you to reduce prices by 80% at the lowest tier and up to 90% discount on the highest tier of data volumes. There's also several new features to this, including expanded sensitive data discovery, including updated machine learning models for PII and customer-defined sensitive data types using regular expressions, because who doesn't love a good regular expression? Multi-account support via Amazon organizations, kind of built in now. Full API coverage for programmatic use of services with AWS SDKs and AWS CLI, now available in 17 regions. A new simplified free tier and free trial to help you get started and understand your costs before you invest a small child or the GDP of a small country. And a completely redesigned console and user experience, because who doesn't love a good console? And then if you are, in the past, you had to tie this pretty tightly into S3 backend using S3 data events. You no longer have to do that from CloudTrail. So you now have that cost savings available to you as well. And there's now a continual evaluation of all the buckets, issuing security findings for any public bucket, unencrypted bucket, and for buckets shared with or replicated to an Amazon account outside of your organization. Also, the anomaly detection is now available to you. So if there's some type of exfiltration event that's out of norm, that will now be caught and alerted to you via GuardDuty, integrated into Macy, and all available to you today. So this is a pretty great announcement for a lot of companies who've been looking for this capability. They did add this extra little nugget. They did say the release of Macy remains optimized for S3. However, anything you get into S3 permanently or temporarily in an object format supported by Macy can be scanned for sensitive data. This allows you to expand the coverage of data residing outside of S3 by pulling data out of custom apps. Now, if you remember, we've been talking about RDS export to S3, and we've been talking about other exports to S3, and now that makes a lot of sense when you can now scan that data with Macy and identify your PII data. So I think we're still looking for a larger DLP solution coming down the road, but this is the baby steps to get there.
It's funny, I was reading today about how a sudden change in behavior between March and today is throwing off a bunch of machine learning models. People have different access patterns. The traffic's all different. So many things that we monitor and use to build models on in the world are completely messed up because of the last 2 or 3 months of activity. So I wonder if Macy's going to sort of go, everyone's accessing data in the bucket and they haven't been for months. You know,
all those home IP addresses now that are hitting the buckets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think the 80% price cut is the new way of announcing that a product is GA.
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, because Macy's one of those interesting things. It was an acquisition that they sort of rebranded in a very sort of light way, I guess. Like, it was very obvious this is not an Amazon product. The console experiences were different. The integrations were non-existent. And then it was, super expensive on top of it, which made you think that it just wasn't designed for scale or to be, like maybe they were trying to reduce usage by keeping the cost high. So all these changes are like, we just redid everything. That's what it looks like to me. So I find that, funny. And I don't know if that's, even Amazon, I guess, makes mistakes.
GA.
Yeah.
Well, I've been hearing for the last year and a half that fundamentally Macy wasn't scaling the way they thought it was going to, and they were going to have to do a major rewrite on it in the back end. So that rumor's been out there for a while. So I definitely think this is the long-awaited fruition of that effort that started about 18 months ago. So
that makes GA Gen 2, right?
This is really Gen 2. It's Gen 2. It's more secure.
Really.
The next announcement that was summit related is the EC2 price reduction. This is for EC2 instance savings plans and standard reserve instances. This price reduction on EC2 allows you to basically reduce your costs anywhere from 1% to 18%, depending on what you were previously paying for an RI or savings plan. They're across all of the C5, M5, R5, in the NA and D variants, as well as the T3, T3A, Z1D, and the A1 instances, all available to you. An example of savings for an M5 instance family with 1 year commit can save up to 2% in North California, or 16% on a 3-year deal in a different region, 16%. There are some shenanigans, though, I have to say on this one, because they've been pushing savings plan as this great new flexible way. But if you didn't do the instant savings plan, you're not getting the savings. So if you just went with the generic, I'm paying by CPU hour, you're not getting these savings, which I think is kind of a bummer and really kind of negates their whole argument for using savings plan in that way.
If you had just switched over to using savings plan, but then it's one of those things where this is a hard lesson on how, maybe their new price cuts aren't going to be for you or applied to you. And if you're hemming and hawing and considering whether or not to move over, this is just going to be more evidence that you shouldn't. So I'm a little confused on why they did this. It seems like they're sort of shooting themselves in the foot if they want to move people over to the savings plan.
Okay. No one else wants to say anything. Is the volume better?
I did my part.
You did a good job.
You're not talking, Jonathan. We can't hear you. I see your lips moving, but I don't see it. There he is.
My lips move, but nobody hears what I'm saying. It sounds like a famous lyric to a song.
The other price reduction was the AWS inter-region data transfer price reduction. If you are in Brazil, Bahrain, Cape Town, or Sydney, you have seen a significant reduction by about 20 to 25%, depending on the region, for your transfer between regions. So if you are sometimes somehow replicating data to one of those places, like our friend Ian in Sydney, you are now much happier with your data transfer bill. So there you go. It's another nice cost savings. So overall, those were the big three announcements from Summit that are going to help you out there in the field. Unfortunately, we didn't get an amazing Matt Wood passionate attempt to have people love SageMaker. Well, moving on to our main show. The first one up is Jedi. Jedi has gone full nuclear battle at this point. Microsoft is throwing barbs. Amazon's retorting. It's a fantastic world if you're into cloud drama. I just have to put it out there. Amazon has filed a second secret protest with the DoD about the Jedi contract. The protest hasn't been made public yet, but Amazon's Drew Herdner, communications chief, in a blog post described it as a fatally flawed on all 6 of the technical evaluation factors by the DoD. After AWS won the stay of order on the Jedi contract, the court ordered the DoD to revise the proposal. And AWS contends that the DoD amended the Jedi solicitation for a key part of the contract that deals with pricing scenarios for online cloud storage. The amendment came after the Court of Federal Claims ruled that the DoD's evaluations of this factor did not comply with the contract's requirements and means both AWS and Microsoft can submit revised proposals. AWS claims the new language is ambiguous and has been unresponsive in the multiple requests from AWS for clarification to the DoD. And Amazon is asking for the DoD to consider more than simply the one technical evaluation factor. Here with a quote from Herdner from his blog post. Because the first issue the judge reviewed was sufficient to issue the injunction against Jedi, she did not need to address the many other issues raised in our complaint. The DoD initially said they'd correct the evaluation, but only this one flaw. We objected to that approach because it's likely to lead us back to the same situation if the DoD doesn't also rectify the other flaws. Microsoft responded in kind with a lovely blog post where they said, this latest filing, filed with the DoD this time, is another example of Amazon trying to bog down Jedi in complaints, litigation, and other delays designed to force a do-over to rescue its failed bid. And now Amazon is at it again, trying to grind this process to a halt, keeping vital technology from men and women in uniform, the very people Amazon says it supports. Which then Mr. Herdner responds back with, Microsoft is doing an awful lot of posturing. We understand why. Nobody knowledgeable and objective believes that they have better offering. And this has been further underscored by their spotty operational performance during the COVID-19 crisis and in 2020 year to date. Whew! Shots fired.
Yeah.
I feel like caricature of someone else on the next summit.
So the Jedi battle is heating up continually here. I read an interesting article that said it's about $40 to $50 billion in future contracts that Microsoft might win over Amazon because of the Jedi contract awarding. So I see why they're now fighting a little bit heavy. It's not about the DoD as much as about that future business they may miss out on because they missed out on this deal. So interesting times. We'll continue to watch that very, very closely as I'm sure it's going to continue to heat up publicly and in the courts. Moving on to Amazon announcements that were not part of the summit. Amazon and Microsoft actually now announcing that all their employees are going to be optional to work from home until at least October under new guidelines they published. Basically, Amazon had a statement here to GeekWire. Employees who work in a role that can effectively be done from home are welcome to do so until at least October 2nd. We continue to evaluate the situation, update this page as needed. This is particularly difficult for companies, though, that rely on Amazon.com and AWS for business, especially restaurants and hotels near South Lake Union. And so this will have large impacts on both Amazon, the companies in their area, as well as their workers as they continue to go work from home. And Microsoft has also announced the same thing. So that's a huge amount of workforce in Seattle that will not be commuting for quite a while and will be in this new reality. So I think we are just seeing the beginning of really large, long-scale work from home policies coming out from employers across the country.
It'd be interesting to see the positive effect because those people are still going to be buying coffees and buying lunches. They're just going to be buying them from somebody else.
It's true. we will continue to keep an eye on this COVID stuff and how it's impacting technology and the world of cloud and our vendors and friends. But the Amazon Code Guru Reviewer launches a new, more cost-effective pricing model. So we talked about this when it got announced at reInvent. So first of all, Code Guru uses a terrible model where they charge you for lines of code. And so basically for every 100 lines of code, I believe it's something like 75 cents, where they basically analyze it. This is a poor incentive for most customers because it encourages people to write more lines of code as an incentive, or write less lines of code, even though it might not be the right thing to do because you're paying for it. But one of the things we talked about was if you did a pull request or you did a large fork and you wanted to re-merge into the base, that would be all of your code basically being rescanned. And so Amazon heard that feedback at reInvent, and probably from people like us who bitched about it. They basically now make it so that you only charged for the code that's changing in the pull request, meaning that you're no longer double paying for the code to be analyzed numerous times. So that is a fantastic improvement. I'm glad to see that one. I still would like them to come up with a better pricing model than build per line of code. But baby steps.
I wonder, because process time, like you start thinking about alternative methods of pricing, and so it's like compute time, process time, but then it becomes subjective. So like at least this is a very finite in the user's control method.
Yeah, but so would be this number of user per user license fee, and if you want this, you had to be one of these particular users. You do it per repo fee. You could do different. There's all kinds of ways you could do this that are different.
I know what it should be. Charge per identified defect.
Some developers would get fired.
For me to use. Yeah,
exactly.
No, I'm with Ryan. I think they should charge per gigabyte second, basically, just like Lambda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's CPU and memory usage to analyze the code, and that's what you should pay for. But that's just me.
Maybe a slight upcharge to cover the cost of developing the service and running the service, but effectively it should be billed based on the resources assigned to the task.
Amazon EKS is now supporting Kubernetes version 1.16. This comes 7 weeks from the announcement of 1.15. Now, if you remember in 1.15, they talked about that they had made major infrastructure investments to start moving these releases through the pipeline much faster. So 7 weeks is definitely better than 1.14 to 1.15 was, but still not quite where we would like to see it, I think, from a normal Kubernetes world. But again, it's a good progress in the right direction. And so hopefully we'll start seeing that continue to speed up as they work out the kinks of their new process. For those of you who are not following along Kubernetes 1.16, there are several feature enhancements, including the volume resizing support in beta. The Windows group MSA feature is now in beta. The finalizer protect for service load balancers in beta, and the custom resource definitions and emission webhooks are now generally available as part of 1.16. Do be aware that 1.16 has several API deprecations in Kubernetes, and so you do need to ensure your application and add-ons are updated, or your workloads could fail. This also ends the official support of 1.13 and will be deprecated on June 30th, 2020 in EKS, as they only support 3 versions at a time. And so do get those upgrades going on your clusters today.
It's so funny because we work with a lot of customers who are pretty leading edge, but I have a feeling that the deprecation is going to be more of an issue for customers than the not quick enough to get the new version out.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not using some of the more cutting edge service mesh and Knative and those type of features, I think the being on the latest cutting edge isn't really necessary, and you really just want stability. So I think we even see in the Google world where GKE, you can be on the cutting edge, which is the most current version, but then the more stable versions are typically 2 or 3 versions back, anyways. And so I think you're kind of right on that. In addition to supporting 1.16, they are also now making it easier to create clusters and manage them in the AWS console. For those of you not using infrastructure as code, this is a new wizard that simplifies the creation and provides additional information about cluster components. And they've also redesigned the cluster management pages with a new tabbed layout, which makes it easier to understand and modify your cluster components. Which, having used the EKS cluster management console on AWS, I'm glad about this because it was a bit of a mess. They tried to take a lot of the ECS concepts and make them translate to EKS, and it doesn't quite work. So it's good to see some more EKS-specific organization of those pages.
I've never seen the console for EKS. It's always been Terraform.
I see it occasionally. Yeah, someone's happy. Someone's happy out there, especially companies who are trying to get started with EKS. spinning up an EKS cluster was a bit of a science before now, or maybe a little bit of art in there as well. Now I think it's more of a wizard and something much faster to get kind of a quick POC going, which I think is a big benefit for them. They've lost a lot of bake-offs with GKE just on that alone, how simple it is to spin up and down a cluster, even though at the end of the day, that's the simplest part of running Kubernetes, but that's where they lose. So glad to see a wizard. I think that'll help a lot. AWS IAM is introducing an updated policy default for IAM user passwords, which I have to say, thank goodness, because the number one problem with every new Amazon account is that this default password policy that was there was garbage. And all of the lovely security vendors out there like Fugue and Cloudsploit and Prisma, Redlock, all basically will tell you right away that your default IAM policy is insecure and not in good standing of the CSA. And so they have now set up the new default IAM policy, which will go into effect on August 3rd. Will include the requirement of a minimum of 8 characters, includes a minimum of 3 of the following character types: uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and non-alphanumeric symbols, and cannot be identical to your AWS account name or your email address used in the process. If you have never set a policy, there are a couple things to be aware of. If you have no password policy, your account will be upgraded to the new policy standard on the 3rd, but you will not be forced to use it until your password expires or is changed manually. If you have a password policy today, there will be no change for you at all. They will not override your policy, and so you're in good shape. And if you have automation workflows that leverage your passwords that don't meet the requirements or don't have a password custom policy, you'll need to fix this prior to August 3rd, or else those automations will break. So definitely take a look at that before that happens.
I wonder how long it's going to be before they require MFA. It's fairly commonplace anymore.
It couldn't be fast enough, in my opinion. Yeah. I wish it was in this list as well.
There's kind of no excuse for it anymore. I mean, either you've got federated login with MFA, or you've got everyone's got a phone, everyone's got a computer. Otherwise, not using the cloud. So there's no excuse to not have MFA.
I mean, I feel that way about encryption at rest and TLS enablement on these services now too. I wish they all were default secure, and you had to make choices to make them unsecure, because I think that's where you start having some gaps where people think they're doing the right thing and they're really not. Where if you were giving them defaults that were secure and capable, then I think you get a better outcome.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, moving on to other small devices, including IoT devices, Amazon has announced a 90% price reduction for AWS IoT jobs globally. So this is for all users of IoT jobs. This basically moves the pricing for remote actions, and remote actions could be things like telling an IoT device to upgrade or to send data or to do some other function. It used to be 3 cents per 250,000 events. This is now reduced to 0.3 of a cent for the first 250,000 actions, and to a 15th 1,000th for over 250,000 actions a month. I think my decimals are correct on that. Don't at me if I was wrong. But IoT device jobs enable customers to trigger remote actions on one or more of their IoT devices when hooked to the AWS IoT core service. And these savings, again, are global. So that's a pretty big savings for if you have a large fleet of IoT devices that need to basically get updated, managed, taken care of, told to start jobs, stop jobs, return to base, all the things that you might have an IoT device do. I think this is great for those people who are not me, unfortunately.
This has to be one of those things where they priced it to get some feedback early, but they didn't want a whole thundering herd of IoT devices. So, because this is a huge price cut. So
even 3 cents for 250,000 actions is nothing, really.
Doesn't seem that bad, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's almost free. I mean, think about. I assume they charge a bandwidth on top of the service. They usually do.
Yeah, there's a bunch of other costs associated with this too, but the one of the largest costs was this remote action cost. We always talk about sometimes leading announcements that lead into other events. And so if you think about step functions and what they're doing with some of these things, if you're penalized for making these calls to the remote device, you definitely don't want to have an interactive session that requires a lot of back and forth chatter between the IoT device and the control panel. Where this might start enabling some new features and things like Greengrass and others that are more bidirectional and more getting telemetry and real-time data processing from the cloud or from the edge directly into the devices. And I think that's where you're seeing this is kind of a stepping stone to some bigger picture that we don't quite understand yet.
It's my AI-powered submarine, for sure.
Oh, for sure. There you go. Well, speaking of step functions, AWS has announced the integration of workflow with step functions and AWS code build. This allows you now to start setting up more complicated build pipelines. So typically one of the challenges with using code build, for those of you who have attempted it, like myself, is that you typically have to run the entire code build pipeline every time. So if you are doing a hotfix and it's only 5 lines of code, you still have to go through your checkmark scan, your continuous integration testing, your unit tests, all these things, and it might take a good couple hours if you have a very robust test suite, and you just need to get a really quick patch out. So this capability, now you can actually set up different branches and say this is a hotfix, and I don't care about all those things. I can set up different user input parameters. If certain tests fail, I can actually trigger other events to occur in my pipeline, and there's a lot of capabilities that this really enables for you to be able to leverage a much more powerful story around your continuous integration, continuous deployment pipelines around this capability. So I actually really am excited about this. This is one of the few announcements I've seen for work step functions where I actually really get it. I really understand why it's important, because I'm not a huge step functions person, but I do appreciate what it can do in a lot of different use cases. But this one is very close and near and dear to my heart as being a DevOps guy for a very long time. I'm very familiar with these use cases and patterns.
Yeah, you were really excited in Slack when this came out. And so I read it and I was like, because I read the headline and I don't really understand why, like, code pipeline, it does things, branch name, nothing, until I started diving into the details and how powerful this really was and the type of flexibility you have and the actions that you can take during your code builds. It is really, truly something that is going to make these tools much easier to use. And EventBridge is cool too. Like if you like listening for events to trigger these things in basic different functions. I was thinking about the use cases for using like Jira to stream events into the EventBridge and trigger code build pipeline or, actions. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, well, and because it's step functions, again, you're talking about Lambda. So you can now spin off a ton of different stuff with Lambda Spackle. You can do all kinds of things where you're basically shipping, I'm triggering now a Kubernetes build, deployment. I'm triggering a telemetry thing where I'm now pulling in data, then feeding it into machine learning, and that's now changing the paradigms of how I'm doing a bunch of stuff in my pipeline. So I think there's just a lot of really cool use cases this enables. And I'm super excited to see what people develop over the next few months using this capability. And I think it really takes code pipeline from being like, yeah, it can kind of do what Jenkins does to this is actually a tool I could actually see using now. Peter and Jonathan don't care at all.
You could already do these things. To be fair, you could have previously written a Lambda function which did all these things. It just wasn't so nicely packaged and nicely integrated.
Well, yeah,
the APIs were always there.
They were always there, but I think again, code build specifically was so limited in what those actions could be, and they only accepted certain action capabilities and certain outputs. And so I think this gives you a lot more flexibility on that side of it. So I agree with you. That's what a lot of people have done for a long time is you build this on Lambda, you use Jenkins, and everything is hunky-dory. I think now you can actually put a lot more of this logic into code build, which I like.
Yep.
Yeah, there are things you couldn't do before, like the parallel builds per branch and those things, which this will state, having a state machine powering these decisions enables a lot more logic. So it's still cool, and I like it. Quiet you.
I think it's going to take a long time for people to understand the real power of things like step functions, and sort of showcasing examples like this where you could show really how good it is and how useful it is for very specific use cases will just serve to train people and then help them adopt the service for all kinds of things. It's such an abstract thing. I think it's going to take a long time for people to really kind of grok it and use it for everything.
Unless, of course, no code happens. And then, if you have no code involved here and you have some use cases that you might need code build for and that too. And so I think, again, a lot of announcements kind of lead to bigger things in the future. And again, this is another one of those ones that I feel has larger impacts in a bigger picture perspective. So we'll see. You still have to build the application, though, even if it's a no-code application. Like it's there must be some input that says like what it's going to do. So it's like hashtag no code.
Yeah. All code. I'm all about the all code.
All code, yeah. Well, the final Amazon story for the week is the general availability of Ultra Warm for Amazon Elasticsearch. Ultra Warm is, of course, their low-cost storage tier to provide fast interactive analytics up to 3 petabytes of log data at 1/10 of the cost of the current Amazon Elasticsearch Service storage tier. Ultra Warm is, of course, complementary to Elasticsearch Hot Storage. You cannot use it without it. An ES, of course, is a popular service for log analytics for most companies because of its ability to ingest high volumes of log data and analyze it interactively for fractions of the pennies that Splunk would cost you. UltraRoam solves the problem of the hot storage requirement, and this now makes it much simpler to simplify and streamline your data processing pipelines. The UltraRoam cluster has two sizes available today to you: a medium with 2 vCPU and 15 gigs of memory at 23 cents per hour, or a large with 16 vCPU and 122 gigs of memory at $2.68 per hour. So if you're using Amazon's Elasticsearch capabilities and services, this is definitely something to check out very quickly, as it'll start saving you big money.
I'm surprised they made such a big deal about this. I mean, frozen indexes have been a thing in Elasticsearch for quite a while, so meh.
Well, it's the orchestration of those frozen indexes is really the service, right? Like that's declaring an index as an ultra warm index or a frozen index. Like that's really the service around this. And I think it's just a sign of the things to come. There'll be more tiers in the future as far as, that they'll add to just to introduce more ways to reduce costs.
Yeah, I hope they really do extend the Elasticsearch service to adopt more of the Amazon sort of natives like S3, for example. I mean, why even keep it on an EC2 instance powered up all the time if you only need it once every three weeks or something? Keep it in S3.
Yeah, I mean that's the chaos search play right now. Is basically put your data into S3. We keep the metadata in our indexes, and when you need the data, we just go pull it from S3 directly. So I do think we'll probably see some of that capability coming out in the future as well. But we'll see when it comes. Apparently, the best named cloud product ever. This is the Amazon Hypothesis. Hypothesis, an open source Java GC latency benchmark with predictable allocation rates. The Amazon Credit team introduced the open source Hypothesis benchmark, a synthetic workload that simulates fundamental application characteristics that affect garbage collection latency. The benchmark creates and tests GC load scenarios defined by object allocation rates, heap occupancy, and JVM flags, and then reports the result to the resulting JVM pauses caused by it. They're continuing to work on this, apparently building out CPU power, fragmentation effects, and more dynamics and varied object demographics to help continue to improve this. Interesting enough, in the blog post, they did call out Jill Teen's HeapFragger and did personally thank him for all the work he'd done in that project. And they said a lot of their work was influenced by his HeapFragger, as well as the JHiccup agent is what they use to actually measure the JVM pauses. So I don't know if that's because he has interesting licensing on his open source work that requires them to publicly mention him, or if they really are just that impressed. But I was impressed that they put it in the article altogether. So,
cool. All my Minecraft playing friends will be very, very happy because garbage collection sucks for Java-based games.
I unfortunately don't think Microsoft's going to be a big user of Hypothesis to fix Minecraft, though, unfortunately. There's a new query monitoring capability in the Amazon Redshift console. Amazon Redshift console simplifies isolating and fixing expensive queries with the redesigned query monitoring page. You can use the redesigned query monitoring page by navigating to a cluster details for a cluster and then selecting the query monitoring tab. Customers can execute thousands of queries in their data warehouse, and sometimes it's difficult for them to isolate problematic queries. You can filter up to the top 100 queries by query runtime or duration for the selected time period. And the query monitoring page visually shows the queries in a Gantt chart and allows you to isolate slow or long-running queries. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I love looking at my queries in Gantt charts.
Well, I tell you what, if you're paying a ton for a Redshift cluster and the thing was maxed out and you can't run the queries you want, and you can't figure out why, and you're like, dude, I need this thing I got to find out what it's doing. It's like, sorry, you can't see it's a managed service. That'd probably be pretty frustrating.
I'm just going to run a query to see how many times you said query in that last.
Ooh, yeah.
That's a new story. I'm just working myself up for the lightning round.
Yeah. Select count, little select count query.
I think they probably get a lot of features around monitoring for Redshift just because typically you're sitting around waiting for the thing to finish. So you got to do something and you may as well file off a feature request.
Well, and it's either that or, pay attention to that LinkedIn ad from Snowflake.
I think they're building more query monitoring because, I still think they're going to announce a serverless Redshift, and I think query monitoring is going to be important around serverless Redshift, so they know when to scale up and when not to scale up or scale down, as the case may be.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of stuff coming from Redshift in the future. I mean, I don't have the inside track on any of this, but I do really know they want to beat Snowflake, I think, and so I think you're going to see more in Redshift very, very soon.
And we've already seen a ton. Like, reInvent was a lot of Redshift and SageMaker. They're continuing to progress down that path. So it makes sense we'd see more.
I could also imagine a bunch of customers complaining that they're not getting the performance they expected out of Redshift, blaming the cluster, and then after digging in, it's like, you see this query you wrote? It's not us, it's you. You get many join on how many million rows? Yeah, well.
Good times. But it is a columnar database, so I think it's technically many to many columns.
Many to many columns.
I don't know enough about columnar to actually comment if that's true or not, but someone will correct me, I'm sure, if I was just made that up.
It's fun.
The EC2 M6G instances announced at reInvent are now generally available. These are the new AWS Graviton 2 AMD chips. These are designed by AWS and Annapurna Labs, which Amazon owns, so I don't know why it wasn't just designed by AWS, but here we are. Utilizing the 64-bit ARM Neoverse N1 cores, these processors support 256-bit always-on DRAM encryption. They also include dual SIMD units to double the floating point performance versus the first-generation Gravitons, and they support int8 and FP16 instructions to accelerate machine learning inference workloads. The M6G instances are available in 8 sizes with 1 to 64 CPUs, as well as a bare metal instance. And they support configurations up to 256 gigs of memory, 25 gigabits of networking performance, and 19 gigabits of EBS bandwidth, all powered by the Nitro system. Running a typical open source app stack generally deployed on x86 64 architectures, migrating to Graviton 2 will give you up to a 40% improvement on cost performance ratio compared to similar sized M5 instances. Well, that's pretty huge. They have some customers here, including Honeycomb, uses 30% fewer instances compared to the C series. And InterSystems, which makes a database solution, reported a 28% improvement and 20% cost reduction compared to the equivalent M5 instances. That's huge. Even internal teams at Amazon are seeing these benefits, including the Elasticache team that found that M6G instances deliver up to 50% throughput improvement over M5 instances for Redis. So that's pretty big. They did mention about compiling, and that's one of the big complaints about ARM is that you have to recompile your apps. They did mention that for most interpreted language like Java, Node.js, Python, and Go, your code should be able to run unmodified on M6G, or only compiled applications would have to be changed potentially. The computer and memory optimized the C6G and the R6G are still coming soon, but we do expect to see them very, very soon. The M5 Metal, for comparison here, is $30,363 a month. The M6G Metal is $1,833 a month. Now, they're not quite exactly the same, so I gave you a more apples-to-apples comparison here between the M5 X Large, which is $140.16, and the M6G X Large is $114.57. So significant price savings for potentially a lot more capacity and performance.
I wonder how much of that's the cost of the silicon itself, because they're not paying Intel or AMD. It's it's basically getting it at their own cost because they're making themselves, and how much is power consumption. But I think that the thing that is most interesting to me is encrypted RAM, basically, because now each tenant on a hypervisor gets a different key to encrypt the data in RAM, so it really mitigates some of the concerns about basically sucking data out of somebody else's VM.
Attacks from the side?
Yeah, like the Rowhammer attacks and things like that, where you can basically copy contents of somebody else's VM into your own. So neat. I previewed the M6Gs, and I really wanted to run Elasticsearch on there, but they don't offer that as a supported option. Even though you could compile it yourself for ARM, it's not supported yet, but that would be awesome for running huge clusters.
Yeah, and that price decrease, you just look at that's like a chunk decrease if you could move to those instances if you're doing heavy compute right now.
Yeah.
And these things scream for all that I've heard, as far as people using them, where the performance is astronomical, where you get not only the cost savings if you go to apples instance size, but most likely you can downsize your instance size because the performance gains are there. So you get even more savings. So it's kind of crazy.
They definitely optimize these with moving bunches of data around for machine learning. And so I think we're going to see some awesome benchmarks comparing what Google have with what AWS have later in the year.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to see what those look like. It's interesting on the Apple podcasts that I listen to, they talk about I think it's the A12X Bionic that's in the new iPad Pro. And they say that, basically if you look at the benchmarks on the ARM chip that's in the iPad Pro versus the brand new $25,000 iMac or Mac Pro, that the single core performance between the ARM chip and the Mac Pro, the ARM chip beats it significantly.
Wow.
A $1,200 iPad versus a $15,000 starting spec Mac Pro, beats the crap out of it. So these ARM chips are going to revolutionize a lot of things.
Yeah, but that's not a single core performance is not. That's very application.
Even on multi-core performance, they're pretty close. So.
Yeah, but when you talk about massive NUMA architectures, when you've got chunks of memory being shared by small clusters of cores, I mean, they're optimized for totally different workloads. So while I get it's impressive, and what Apple do with ARM is also cool, I don't think it's a fair comparison.
Fair enough. Apparently, Google's come out with their own ARM chips too soon, so we'll get to.
I hope so, because that was also one of my predictions for last year. They're obviously late.
They're saying it's going to come out for Android first, so maybe that's their foray. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, reinventing enterprise search with Amazon Kendra is now generally available. This is also a reInvent announcement in preview. Kendra is designed to quickly and easily find information that you might need, whether it's looking for the latest version of the company travel policy or asking more technical questions like what's the tensile strength of epoxy adhesives, because you can store that in your intranet, of course. And we never get the right answer right away or at all. Kendra solves this problem and enables organizations to index structured and unstructured data stored in different backends, such as file systems, applications, intranets, and relational databases. You can also do searches based off natural languages, as well as semantic searches and regex searches. It can be integrated into search pages, chat apps, chatbots, and more, and has several new features as part of its GA, including a new scaling option for Enterprise Edition, a new developer edition for lower cost development needs, 3 new cloud connectors, including OneDrive, Salesforce, and ServiceNow, in addition to S3, RDS, and SharePoint, which came out at preview. And then expertise on 8 new domains, including automotive, health, HR, legal, media, entertainment, news, telecom, travel, and leisure, in addition to chemical, energy, finance, insurance, and IT and pharmaceuticals, as well as faster indexing and improved accuracy. Still has very limited regional availability. East 1, West 2, and EU West 1 are the only regions, and the pricing has now been released as well. It's not cheap, let me tell you that right now. It's about $5,200 a month to start, and it goes up from there. So definitely keep an eye out on that if you're going to be looking at this before you get too excited. There's a quote here from the Allen Institute. One of the most impactful things AI like Amazon Kendra can do right now is help scientists, academics, and technologists quickly find the right information in a sea of scientific literature and move important research faster. The Semantic Scholar team at the Allen Institute for AI, along with our partners, is proud to provide Cord 19 and to support the AI resources the community is building to leverage this resource to tackle this crucial problem around COVID-19. So very beneficial in the medical scientific community right now.
I love this stuff. It just reminds me, all these announcements around AI and natural language processing just reminds me more and more of having watched Star Trek years ago, and people just naturally asking a computer to do things or for information and things just getting done. It's just, I think we're almost there in the future now.
Until I can get beamed up by a particle accelerator and moved around the country, instantaneously, I don't know over there.
I want matter replicators. That's what I want.
That'd be awesome too. I want that too. But the one thing the interfaces on the Star Trek is pretty rough. I played with one of those simulators that simulates their data pads. It's not good UI. I don't know who designed that stuff.
Yeah. Every time I have a cloud service that has some ridiculously high starting price, it feels like a single tenant solution.
Could be. I mean, the pricing on this, since you mentioned it, you can search up to 500,000 documents or up to 40,000 queries per day for $7 an hour, which is basically $5,200 a month. And per document scanned and per hour connector is 35 cents. So
yeah. But what if I want to scan one document?
You're paying $7 an hour plus.
Exactly.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the Cloud Pod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
Like, so as we mentioned in the Google announcement around their ability to index data, Azure also announced something this week that's very similar to it. This is the ability to manage and find data with Blob Index for Azure storage, now in preview. Blob Index is a managed secondary index allowing you to store multidimensional object attributes to describe your data objects for Azure Blob Storage. Blob Indexes offers consistent reliability, availability, and performance for all your workloads. And as data sets get larger, finding specific related objects in the sea of data can be difficult and frustrating, as Google just talked about. Previously, you could use List Blob's API to retrieve 5,000 records at a time, parse through the list, and repeat until you found the desired blob. And many users also resort to managing a separate lookup table to find specific objects. These can get out of sync with the physical data, increasing cost, complexity, and frustrations. Blob indexes alleviate this pain of data management and querying with support for all blob types, including block blobs, append blobs, and page blobs. And to populate the blob index, you define key value tag attributes in your data, either on new data during upload or an existing data already in your storage account. You can then reference these blog or blob services as just as lifecycle management policies as well, so which is pretty great.
How many people actually generate tons and tons of data and they don't know what it is or where it goes? I mean, it seems kind of weird to me that there is so much demand for a service where you need to find something that you didn't know where you put it to begin with.
Large Fortune 50 enterprises with multiple distinct business units that don't coordinate with each other.
AKA everywhere I've ever worked.
Or if you need to index blah, blah, blah's log.
Nice.
The, typically, if you think about a really dispersed company, typically corporate IT in the center doesn't always know what the business units are doing. And if the corporate IT wants to be able to pull data across multiple business units, they may not know how the data looks. And so these things become pretty handy pretty quickly versus, denormalizing all the data into data warehouse and then doing all these big ETL rollups. This might be a much faster way to discover data sets that you have that already exist. The next evolution of the Azure VMware solution. This is announcing the preview of the next generation solution for VMware designed and built and supported by Microsoft and endorsed by VMware. The new Azure VMware solution empowers customers to seamlessly extend or completely migrate their existing on-premise VMware apps to Azure without the cost, effort, or risk of re-architecting applications or retooling operations. Additional benefits include the ability to use the Azure hybrid licensing benefits, which will save you a ton of money on your Windows and SQL Server costs. Now, again, this is kind of interesting because we talked about this last year in episode 21 that they had this capability, but that was through a partner called Cloud Simple. And as we talked about in episode 48 in November, they were purchased by Google, who also announced a partnership with them in episode 33. So this is basically their way of now solving the problem that Google bought the partner that they were using to provide VMware in Azure. So glad to see this improvement. It's interesting that VMware is actually an official partner on this one, where in the past they had only officially partnered with AWS. So glad to see that VMware is trying to change their tune and partner with more clouds.
So what do they mean exactly by VMware applications?
So this means you can take your VM and you can move it as is and still run it on top of VMware on top of Azure.
Yeah, you said
it's turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
Did I run Kubernetes cluster on top of that?
You could run Tanzu if you wanted to, which is VMware's Kubernetes capability on top of VMware, on top of Azure, and it's again lots of layers of abstraction on top of blobs, which you then index with the blob index. So. Yeah, we kind of expected this to happen. I think we talked about it in episode 48 when they got bought, that this would be an interesting issue for Azure to deal with, and this is their solution to that problem. So glad to see them solve it, and definitely we'll see where that continues to move on in the future. Azure is going to open up their first data center in New Zealand as they see cloud usage grow in the Kiwi country. Azure has announced plans to open a new data center in New Zealand once it receives approval from the Overseas Investment Office. The significant investment in New Zealand's digital infrastructure is a testament to the remarkable spirit of New Zealand's innovation and reflects how we're pushing the boundaries of what is possible as a nation, Vanessa Sorensen, general manager at Microsoft New Zealand, said in a statement. The company has intent to do more than just open a data center. I will also be making this a part of a broader investment across the country, including skills training and reducing the environmental footprint of data centers in New Zealand. So Microsoft's going to invest some money. I don't know when that data center is going to open, but sometime next couple of years, I guess.
That last bullet point is just code for New Zealand gave us a whole bunch of tax breaks to do a thing. And those tax breaks are contingent upon number of jobs created or some other contingency.
Now, when I was living out there was a little tension around people leaving New Zealand and going to Australia for the economy. And so the New Zealanders would tell a little joke when someone from New Zealand leaves and goes to Australia, they raise the average IQ of both countries.
Nice.
That's a serious problem for New Zealand, though. They call it the brain drain.
Yeah.
I mean, before COVID, they had some programs to encourage tech workers and other jobs to actually relocate there from the States and other places. They've had programs for years now.
Yeah.
It's a pretty small country. Population-wise, I think it's only like 4 or 5 million people.
I just want to go and drive around. It looks beautiful in all the photos.
It is. Like 90% of the country's national park or something. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, the feature is finally here, Peter. You can now deploy Azure Data Lake storage because it's now available to you as a premium tier.
Yes.
So the new premium tier for Azure Data Lake is a new performance tier, which complements the existing hot, cool, and archive tiers for ADLS Gen 2. Premier tier offers significantly lower storage latencies compared to the other tiers and cost savings for workloads that are transactionally heavy. Scenarios that are helped by the new premium tier include the scenarios that require real-time access and random read-write access to large volumes of data, workloads that have small-sized read and write transactions, read-heavy workloads, and workloads that have a high number of transactions or a high transactions per gigabyte ratio. So there you go, Peter.
You know, I like my premium services.
Yeah, I mean, I asked Jonathan for a report earlier, but he didn't select the premium version of the warehouse, so I'm still waiting for the query to get back. That works. Everyone loves a good premium storage tier.
I'm waiting for ultra premium.
It's coming next, I'm sure. Ultra premium for even more random read-write activities. Isn't that what I want my disk to do? Yeah. The Azure Blob storage is enhancing its data protection and recovery capabilities. And when you protect the blob, things get geo-zone redundant storage. And so that means that you can now provide protections against regional disasters and account failovers, allowing you to determine when to initiate a failover instead. It's all now generally available, and as well as releasing 2 new features for you in preview: versioning and point-in-time recovery. Again, when I see these type of features, I sometimes wonder, where were these when you launched? And if you're competing with S3, how did you not have them? But of course, the GZRS, or the GeoZone Redundant Storage, as they call it, writes 3 copies of the data synchronously across multiple Azure availability zones, similar to Zone Redundant Storage, which they call ZRS, because that's not confusing, and provides you continued read-write access even if a data center or AZ is unavailable. Additionally, the GZRS is an async, replicates your data to the secondary geopair region to protect yourself against regional unavailability. The versioning is what you think it is. It's versioning a document, and so you can have multiple versions available to you via version ID, and a point-in-time restore, which can allow you to restore a subset of containers or blobs within a storage account to previous state.
I like the point-in-time recovery. That's cool. That's something that Amazon do not have.
Yeah.
Imagine rolling back all the changes in the bucket to a fixed state. That'd be great for deployments that go wrong, or great for data that gets deleted accidentally or corrupted somehow. That's
maliciously. Yeah.
Or maliciously,
I'm thinking like ransomware attacks that maybe, right now they're on boxes, but maybe they end up in your S3 accounts.
Yeah.
Or your Azure accounts, and or malicious internal actors,
Just think if somebody steals all your data from S3 and then deletes it, you can restore it so it can be stolen all over again.
Yeah, really. Over and over, like Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a good feature. We should request that.
Azure Virtual Machine Scale Sets now provide simpler management during scale-in events. Azure Scale, of course, is a collective way to deploy and easily manage a number of VM instances in a group. You can configure auto-scaling rules for your scale sets that enable you to dynamically increase or decrease the number of instances based on what the workload requires. So these new features allow you to basically protect an instance. So with instance protection, you can now apply the protect from scale-in events to allow these instances to be protected from scale-in events. So if you have 2 servers that you for some reason are pets, but they're in a scale set group and you want to add more nodes to it, you can make sure those 2 nodes never get dropped from the auto-scaling activity, which is a terrible pattern. Don't do that. But if you want it, you have an option. The next one is the custom scale-in policies. When one or more instances need to be removed from a scale set, the instances are selected in a way that remains balanced across AZs and fault domains. But with the scale-in policy, you can now give it things like delete the oldest VMs first when you're scaling out versus the newest VMs. which might be something handy that I wish I could get in auto-scale groups. They do still preference the balancing across AZs to make sure you maintain redundancy. And then the last one is a terminate notification. When an instance is about to be deleted from a scale set, you may want to perform a certain custom action on the instance, like you register from the load balancer, copy the logs off to S3 or blob storage, whatever. And with the terminate notification feature, you can configure your instance to receive NVM notifications about upcoming instance deletion and pause the delete operation for 5 to 15 minutes to perform those custom actions. These notifications are sent through the Azure metadata service and can be received using a REST endpoint accessible from within the VM. And when your action completes, you can also post back to the metadata service, letting it know the server is ready for termination. I think that's a really cool feature.
Amazon have all these things, and they have for years. You can get SNS notifications. They have life cycling for auto-scaling instances, so you can move them off to the side and copy logs off and do things before they get terminated. They've got custom scaling policies where you can do oldest first, newest first, stay balanced. This is absolutely nothing new, nothing revolutionary, and it must be really ballsy of a marketing person to put a post together like this when it's just catch-up stuff.
Can you post the metadata service?
I don't know. You can post the metadata service.
Yeah, that last one is the differentiator. You're right. Everything else, Amazon definitely
is Amazon.
Well, with Spot instances in an AWS, they communicate termination notice through the metadata service.
Yeah, but not an autoscale group that doesn't use Spot that I'm aware of.
But they have lifecycle hooks that you can do exactly the same thing with.
That's true. Yeah, it's got a lifecycle hook.
So nothing new. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, but it's new if you're an Azure user.
Yeah, I know. It goes to show just how many features I take for granted, not having a lot of workloads, in other clouds, and so I've only dabbled with Azure, I've played around with Google. And so a lot of these things, when they're announced, I'm like, they didn't have that, it's so spoiled.
That even happens to me though on Amazon stuff sometimes. So they'll announce something. I was like, I thought I already did that.
Yeah,
it happens to all of us. Good to see it for scale sets, which is a terrible. By the way, this whole naming on this is awful. A scale set and a scale in event, but a scale in event can be a scale out event when you're scaling more servers up or you're scaling more servers.
I'd like to think that AWS got all the good names and Azure just have to think of really bad ones, but we know that's not the case either. So,
no. I mean, if AWS can come up with hypothesis as a name, Azure can come up with something better than scale in events. That means you're adding or removing servers. So,
I just imagine teaching the class on this and trying to explain what all these terms mean to people who are unfamiliar with any of these things, and it just sounds like it would sound like so much gibberish and the same word over and over and over with different meanings.
I think I just would have copied Amazon's terms until they sued me because it's so much easier since they created the market.
I mean, I can see the beginning. Welcome to the Advanced Azure Architecture class, where we're going to talk about blobs, blob objects, blob storage, premium ultra blobs, and scale-in sets. And everyone's going to be like, huh? I'm in the wrong room.
Yeah. This is ceramics.
Oh, this is basket weaving 101.
Media studies.
Microsoft and Redis Labs are collaborating to give you developers new Azure Cache for Redis capabilities. Azure has always had a Redis offering via the open source capabilities of Redis, but they did not have enterprise, and none of the cloud providers provide enterprise features today. The partnership represents the first native integration between Redis Labs technology and a major cloud platform, underscoring Azure's commitment to customer choice and flexibility. This allows you to now start using some of the Redis Labs plugins, including Redis Search, Redis Bloom, Redis Time Series, and many, many more, as well as you have ability to get to support on the Redis side, as well as Azure to jointly offer this to you as a customer. So if you're into Redis in a big way and you want all these advanced capabilities and you want to have to run it on an instance on Azure, you now have this available to you through this partnership.
What do you mean the first native integration between Redis Labs and the major cloud platform? Elasticache has supported Redis forever.
No, but that's open source Redis. This is an enterprise offering. And Azure even had open source Redis before this with Azure Cache for Redis. This is about bringing the enterprise features to Azure customers using Azure Cache for Redis. So you can now enable these enterprise capabilities and pay more money. It's basically Azure Redis Cache Premium or Ultra Premium.
I was going to say, I was going to wait for the...
What does Redis Enterprise do? That
it gives you advantages of all these plugins. So the Redis Search, the Redis Bloom, and the Redis Time Series plugin, for example, from Redis Labs, are capabilities to enhance and make your Redis better.
But it's a key value store. Why do you need those things?
Some developer out there is super excited about this, Jonathan, and I don't know who it is, but they're really excited.
You can email Jonathan at thecloudpod.net with all of your complaints.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Redis Bloom extends Redis core to support additional probabilistic data structures. It allows for solving computer science problems at a constant memory space with extremely fast processing and low error rate. It supports scalable Bloom and Cuckoo filters to determine with a degree of certainty whether an item is present or absent from a collection. That sounds cuckoo to me.
Yeah, I have no idea what
we should use. We should let Redis Bloom do summit predictions next year.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Apparently, there's also Redis JSON, which makes Redis support JSON documents. Redis Graph for graph database needs. Redis Gears and Redis AI. So those are all additional modules that might be able to get in the future.
Actually, there was one cool thing that I learned about Redis a long time ago, which is the way you could do backups of the key value store, or the way it did backups of the key value store when you issued the save command. And that's that it literally forks its process and relies on the operating system to copy the entire memory set into another process. And then one of them dumps it to disk and the other one just carries on running as a server. It's really kind of a novel way of doing it, but it doesn't mean you need twice as much memory in the server if you want to do backups to disk or persist to disk. It's a really neat way of using something that the operating system provides natively to do something like that, when otherwise, it would be difficult. So there we go. Nerd 101.
Nice.
Well, I mean, considering how much Jonathan loved the scale set changes, he's going to really love this feature.
Shut the front door.
Announcing the Azure Front Door rules engine in preview. This is Azure Front Door, of course, is CloudFront on the Azure world. You can take advantage of new rules to further customize the Azure Front Door behavior to meet the needs of their customers. The rules engine allows you to specify how HTTP requests are handled at the edge. This allows you to do things like enforce HTTPS, ensure all your end users interact with the content over a secure connection, implement all sorts of security headers, including cross-site encrypting, content security policy, CORS policies, etc., route requests to mobile or desktop version of your application based on the patterns in the context of the request header, use redirect capabilities to return 301, 302, 307, 308 redirects to the client, direct new host names, paths, or protocols, dynamically modify the caching configuration of your route based on the incoming request, and rewrite the request URL path and forward the request to the appropriate backend in the configured backend pool. And I know you're going to tell me CloudFront already had all those features. Right?
Lambda at edge. Light. Yeah, but it's neat though. It's good that they're continuing to work on things when they know they've been beaten and will never win over AWS and GCP. So,
well, I mean, there's a ton of Microsoft companies out there that are super excited about moving to Azure. Yeah, I'm sure they're very happy that they have this capability now. They probably think it's revolutionary, Jonathan, because they don't know anything better.
Maybe. I guess we need to start talking about things without having to refer to AWS as the to get people to understand what the technology is, but it's hard not to when they're so far behind.
But all these announcements are required for them to catch up.
Yeah.
They have to make them. Yep. Because all the customers, Amazon designs their feature set based on customer feedback. Azure customers are going to make the same thing. These are not unique features that people need. And so they got it. You have to put these into your products. And so, yes, someone else already did it. But if you don't establish that baseline of comparable service, you can't really innovate from there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't have to compare it to CloudFront. I can compare it to Cloudflare or Akamai or something else.
Yeah, Akamai.
There you go.
That's a good one.
In a story that we just announced in preview like 3 weeks ago, Azure has made Spot instances generally available. So you're welcome if you didn't want to use them before because they were in beta or preview. They're now available to you as generally available. And as Ryan and I pointed out last time we talked about this, they don't know what Spot instances are really good for because their use cases still do not support fleets. So be careful with these. They're a little early. The only thing you should use them for batch jobs and stateless applications and things that can only run short periods of time. And based on the track record they've had in the pandemic, I'm going to say the spot market's going to be pretty volatile. Mm-hmm. So I would watch this one carefully. Don't do anything real with it yet.
Well, I got to say, I'm just glad it's out of beta because when it was in beta, I was afraid I might lose an instance.
You should be afraid you're going to lose an instance now.
Yeah. Yeah.
especially if you're not a paying customer. Google Cloud Data Catalog is a new, fully managed and scalable metadata management service. You can use it to quickly discover, understand, and manage all the data from one simple interface. And they go on to say that most organizations are dealing with a large and growing number of data assets, and they want to open up access to that data so business users can find the right data assets through self-service capabilities. Google apparently suffered similar challenges, and so they built this for Google and now have made this available to all GCP customers. The technical metadata for BigQuery assets like datasets, tables, and views is automatically synced into Data Catalog, and you can start using Data Catalog without tedious setup. It also syncs with data in PubSub and user-created file sets from cloud storage capabilities, as well as integrations into non-GCP data assets, leveraging the Data Catalog connectors to pull this data together and then query it out of BigQuery. It does also support Google DLP to encrypt PII data that it discovers as it goes, and does support all of the IAM capabilities of Google Cloud to limit access to data to only people who need to see it.
This is a fantastic service. I missed the preview announcement of this, so I'm catching it now. So I just learned about this as I was reading through this release. It's just such a common problem that every business has, which is how to discover, assets and how to know whose they are. And so Amazon uses tags, but, the tags are, there's coverage is not always there, and people have to properly set the tags. And so I believe the service for at least these 3 Google services, it's automatically generating this data into the catalog, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just... Go ahead, Peter.
I just think that the big part of this is, what are the data connectors, the data catalog connectors? What is that coverage going to look like? Because for this to be a super effective service, it's got to cover a lot of your data in your enterprise.
I sort of feel like this is what Amazon meant to release with Kendra, but failed completely. I do see this as really cool and the use cases, and I wouldn't be shocked to see a SageMaker service come out that's sort of similar to this to allow you to do kind of similar things inside the SageMaker tooling. But yeah, overall, I think there's a lot of really powerful use cases, and we actually Amazon Azure actually has a very similar feature that they announced this week as well that we'll talk about a little bit in the future. But it's definitely a problem that a lot of enterprises suffer from, and I'm glad to see a solution out there in the market that isn't super expensive.
I mean, it's cool that it's all data, though. It's not just we're indexing your Excel files or your Word docs or something else. I mean, it's all that stuff and more. It's every message that gets sent in a notification service. It's everything in a queue. It's all the data you've got in your tables. It really is a view into everything that you have as a business or as an organization. And this is going to be awesome for driving things like AI. I mean, AI thrives on data. And providing all the data, all the metadata about everything that you have to an AI system with something like this will be fantastic.
We may not be going to Vegas this year because a reInvent might be canceled, but Google has arrived, and they have announced their 23rd region in Las Vegas is now online and available to all of their customers. This new Western region will allow you to spread workloads across the Western U.S., including our existing cloud regions in Los Angeles, Salt Lake City, and Oregon. There's immediately access to 3 availability zones, with each zone having a separate software, power, cooling, network, and security infrastructure, and includes a large pool of compute and storage resources available to you today in beautiful Las Vegas.
I mean, it's kind of funny. It's always been a hotspot for data centers. I remember 20 years ago, that was the desired DR location for all the people who had their data centers in the San Francisco Bay Area.
It's funny to me because I know why they all want to be there, which is the Hoover Dam. The Hoover Dam is cheap power. Cheap power is why Vegas is there. But Hoover Dam also is a big natural, non-natural land formation that has a large body of water behind it that if it ever failed, would take out all those data centers. So for me, it's a little bit
above the dam. Be above the dam.
Above the dam. But yeah, it's definitely these things end up in Las Vegas because of the proximity to cheap power. It's the same reason why you see them a lot of data centers in Eastern Washington because of all the hydroelectric dams there. It's just a natural extension of any type of cheap power will be data centers because they're very power hungry.
Oregon as well. Like there's a lot of hydroelectric power off of the Columbia River, and that's why you see them there.
Yep.
And it's not 120 degrees there.
Yeah.
True. Very true.
It's also really safe as far as natural disasters go. I mean, it's not earthquake prone. It's not going to get hurricanes. It really isn't liable to flood too much. It's a very safe place to be for a DR site.
I thought Colorado was the place that had none of the natural disasters.
Arizona and New Mexico are pretty popular for that too. So anywhere in that kind of that South Midwest region is kind of in that boat.
Yeah, because if a comet's going to fall anywhere in the continental United States, it's totally going to hit Vegas. Like that's where it should land.
Gonna land in the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
Stay away from the coast.
Blog post that highlights our former and hopefully future sponsor, Blue Medora, talking about the use of BindPlane to aggregate all of your logs into the Google Cloud Observability Stack, which used to be known as Stackdriver. You can check out our interview with Mike Kelly from TCP Talks to learn more about BindPlane and all of that, as well as read this blog post to see how Google thinks about integrating these services too. So we want to give a shout out to them, as that was a pretty great article and a little highlight for you on TCP Talks. Google has.
Oh, sorry, when did they get rid of Stackdriver name? I love that name.
That was like 3 or 4 weeks, 2 months ago, maybe. They renamed it to Observability Platform from Stackdriver.
How lame.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't cover it on the show. It wasn't worthy.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's it? It's GCOP now, or Observability? Like it's so vanilla. It's bland.
Yeah, I like Stackdriver.
I like Stackdriver too. I think it was a missed opportunity. But I think they didn't want it to be known as the acquisition they did, that they integrated something, rebranded it. Yeah, I don't like it.
Just rolls off the tongue there, right? Rolls off the tongue.
Google Cloud Observability Platform versus Stackdriver. Now I don't know what Stackdriver has to do with monitoring or logging. So I get the confusion, but I still like Stackdriver better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Get to know your Google Cloud with their new Google Cloud Architecture Framework, available to everyone. The framework provides architectural best practices and implementation guidance on products and services to aid your application design choices based on your unique business needs. And we talk about this all the time in the Cloud Pod, that you really do need to understand the core fundamentals of how these clouds are designed to properly architect your own application to leverage them in highly available and fault-tolerant methods. This framework from Google allows you to review 4 key principles, including operational excellence, security, privacy, and compliance, reliability, performance, cost optimizations, and they also recommend reviewing the system design considerations first. No mention of the builders library at the summit, was there?
There was actually. It was on one of the slides. They talked about the educational resources they had available.
Did they announce that there's new articles?
No.
I got all excited for a second because they talked about the Builders Library in the same context as the approved architectures library they have. But so they announced a lot of new features for that side, and then very quickly just stopped mentioning all of the Builders Library stuff, which was sort of disappointing. So I really felt he was leading into it. Just didn't happen.
Maybe we'll see an announcement in the next few days or weeks, because that keynote was also recorded well ahead of time. And maybe they didn't include things like feature releases because they weren't sure they were going to ship on time. And so perhaps we'll see something coming out soon. I hope so.
And our last Google announcement is DataStax is bringing their Apache Cassandra as a service to Google Cloud. So you can now license the Astra service, which is their DataStax Cassandra as a service on Google Cloud, simplify your unified billing, and integrate directly into the Google console. Astra deploys and manages your enterprise Cassandra database directly on top of Google Cloud's infrastructure. Available to you today if you're into Cassandra and you don't want to manage it, which Ryan recommends heavily.
Yes, I do. Very much so.
You recommend not managing it or managing
Not managing Cassandra.
Nice.
Sounds a little bit like Atlas, doesn't it? Which is MongoDB's basically similar offering.
Cloud, yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about people or about letting a vendor remote into your account and manage infrastructure sort of within your own secure walls?
Ever since they announced this concept of having these open source technologies that plug into your Google account and have access to your stuff, I've wanted them to explain the security better, and they've yet to do so. So I do have a lot of questions about that, and I would love to see a blog post from their security team explaining how they keep DataStax's managed service away from your data that you don't want them to have access to. Especially if I mess up like firewall rules or other things that I could easily make a mistake on from a configuration perspective. Not that I expect that's happening, but I do want to know so I can be, is this in its own isolated VPC? and they're just using like an ENI type attachment like they do in Amazon to connect to my thing, and I just talk to it to that endpoint, or is it actually in my VPC? Like, there's a bunch of questions about that I don't really understand, or have really gotten clear answers about. So someday someone will tell me, or I'll just do it myself and figure it out.
We should try and get a Google person on to answer those questions for us. That'd make a good show.
I did get a correction from a Google person one time, and he told me a couple things, and he said he'd come on the show. I should ping him.
Cool.
Well, an Astro employee will never ask for your password. Just remember that.
Or require you to send a credit card number via email. All right. Well, that takes us to the lightning round, Peter.
Amazon CloudWatch Logs Insights now allows you to save queries.
Query, no! Oh, it's okay.
Nice.
I mean, the only insight I know from my logs is that people log too much stuff.
Yeah. So this is, for me, you already know your app breaks that one way. Why do you need to save your query that just shows that your app broke the same way?
Keep reminding me. Masochist.
Just go fix your code. Fix the code. I'm going to create an alert when I log this one event that I know is a terrible action that occurred. Great, thanks. You could have just fixed the code in the time it took you to write that query.
Amazon Chime adds new policies to govern meeting access.
I only need one policy. Denied.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can I get a policy that makes it impossible for me to join a Chime meeting?
Maybe. Nobody's going to sing chime after chime.
Oh, we could have won it. Damn it.
Tim did tweet us when we posted that we liked his video. He liked our tweet about it.
Parameter support is now available with service actions in AWS Service Catalog, our favorite feature.
Well, depending on who it is, because Ryan hates it, Peter loves it, and I'm neutral. And I don't actually know where Jonathan stands on the factor, but all I know is that now we're putting secrets into Service Catalog. How is that going to be?
Well, you can only have one way to deploy an EC2 host. You may as well only have one secret for everything as well.
There you go.
For the record, it does not meet what my expectations are of a service catalog.
It does not mean mine either.
Automating BigQuery exports to an email.
Or, as I call it, hey, the feature lets me email the report to our CEO.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be a pretty small query to fit in an email, though. Small, big query. Big, small query.
Big, small. Just the summary of, I made $1 million for the company this week. Look at how good I did.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan said one of those earlier, how much money he saved me.
Yeah. See, well, you could use it, Jonathan, right there.
He did not include me on the CC. I'm disappointed.
Oh, you were not?
No. Yeah.
Yeah, I was quite pleased with that.
You should be. It's awesome.
Now available enhanced monitoring capabilities for AWS Direct Connect.
Allowing us to finally kill all the terrible monitoring we've done to try to monitor bandwidth through the Direct Connect.
Yeah.
We're going to infer it from the ENI metrics. Like, yeah, it's not really accurate. It's the best I can do.
Especially when you pay for the traffic, right? You'd think they'd have really good. If they can bill it, then they should have monitoring for it.
Trust us. Just trust us.
Mm-hmm.
The pricing is correct.
Nice.
Trust us.
Yeah.
AWS Systems Manager adds support for patching Debian and Oracle Linux instances.
Got nothing.
More importantly, who uses Oracle Linux?
Oracle Linux. That is awesome.
Are you coming down with the virus?
No, it's been patched by AWS Systems Manager.
Yeah.
The virus of Oracle was there at the beginning, though, because it's literally their Linux. It was there to start. You opened yourself to an audit day one because you installed Oracle Linux. The virus is there.
Isn't it cool that when Amazon got such good features that you can literally manage instances in somebody else's cloud with their systems manager with remotely managed instances? I mean, patching Oracle Linux instances in the Oracle cloud with Amazon's solution would just be awesome.
You totally could do that because SSM works on premise. So you could totally make
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
That'd be neat.
Can they patch my Mac? That'd be kind of good.
No Macs.
Maybe next.
They still don't allow virtualization for Mac OS, do they?
No. Unless you're on a Mac.
No.
Control your email flows in Amazon Workmail using AWS Lambda.
Because that's what you want to do is fire up a Lambda for every bit of spam that comes into your company forever.
Why would I ever set an email rule when I could just have it fire a Lambda to also just move it to this trash inbox?
I mean, I think I might finally be beaten now on the number, largest West Coast Lambda consumer. I may now be replaced by someone's spam.
Are they going to have like CloudWatch monitoring for this, so you can tell if you had like a heavy flow month?
Oh God. Maybe we could set one up to just respond to wife. Yes, dear.
Yes.
Yes, dear.
If email
Yes,
address equal, that's a good one.
Amazon Connect now supports automatic offline agent status.
I thought this already existed. I'm sorry, you're number 1,345 in the queue to talk to an agent. Please hold. Your estimated wait time is 4 hours. 25 minutes later, the call center is closed.
Yeah. That sucks.
I thought that was already built in.
Yeah. So are they saying with this that they actually used to route calls to agents who weren't even sitting at their desks? Kind of sounds like it.
Well, I think what's saying is that basically if an agent doesn't automatically, doesn't set itself offline, that they'll detect through machine learning that they're not there and turn it off so they don't take a call. It's not my fault I didn't take calls today, boss. The automatic offline agent thing did it.
AWS Console mobile application adds support for new services on Android.
Who really uses the mobile app to manage their Amazon infrastructure? I tried twice and I said never again. It doesn't do anything.
I can't even fit the console on my 15-inch screen most of the time, let alone an Android phone. Feedback for the UI team. It still sucks.
Yeah, just one button, just new instance, new instance, new instance.
How would you even fill out the new instance form? Like, considering how many fields are on that and how many pages there are, like that would take forever
Default.
on my mobile phone.
Default. Just default.
I would need a launch.
Just one button, new instance. You just get the same thing. Amazon Code Guru Reviewer announces pull request dashboard.
So as long as it tells me that this pull request is going to cost me $300 because Jonathan copy pasted 3,000 lines, 30,000 lines of code, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah,
I've had nightmare stories of people who accidentally committed like whole copies of NPM repos and things along with their code, and it's cost them tens of thousands of dollars to scan somebody else's code. But to be fair, it probably needed to be scanned. So I thank those people who did it.
Yeah, really. Can you post the results, please?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear you. Sorry for your loss. Can you post the results, please?
You help the community out. It is open source code. You should commit back.
Yeah.
AWS Trusted Advisor adds 5 new cost optimization checks.
I only need one. One that says CFO is going to be mad or CFO is going to be happy. That's the only one I need.
Smiley face.
That's the only I need.
Sad face.
I already ignore all the other trusted advisor checks, so I'm really glad they gave me 5 more that I can also ignore.
They're so unrealistic. Like, seriously, this is underutilized. Yeah, it's underutilized, but I need it to be running all the time to do its thing when the time comes. It's like you can't get smaller than a T2 Nano or something anyway. So I know it's underutilized. Thank you for your help.
Mm-hmm. And the winner is I'm sorry, Jonathan. You killed me with that first one with the queries. Yes. Saving the queries. Yeah, that was too good.
I had a suspicion that it was a loss from the beginning because that was pretty good.
I almost wanted him to filter out my laugh. You really caught me off guard.
Pretty good. I think Jonathan's strategy now is either he's going to read the first one and he's going to really put a zinger there that you'll remember through the whole thing, or he'll wait till the very end and do it on the last one. Yeah, and then he just kind of ignores everything in the middle. That's I think is
Yep.
Yeah, I'm on to you, Jonathan.
It's working so far.
It makes sense. Hey, he can't argue with the score.
Sorry, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll get there.
Good. That's what I want to hear. You're like the Niners, worst to first. Worst to first.
Well, the Niners aren't going to go worst to first this year, I don't think. Because I don't know if there's going to be a season.
There might not. Well, then they're going to go undefeated. That's pretty good.
Yeah, well, day 6,325 of quarantine is past us now. We'll wrap up the podcast for the night. So thank you guys very much for joining us once again after a very lackluster summit. We'll hopefully have something more interesting to do a draft on in the future. All right, guys. Have a good night. Have a great week ahead, and we will be back next week here at the Cloud Pod.
See ya.
They can't hear you wave.
Oh, whoops.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel. Go to our website, thecloudpod.net, for sign-up instructions. By the way, the number one way to make Jonathan not edit your mess up is to point out that he'll edit your mess up.
Yeah, I was a fan before I was on the host, so I realized my mistake the minute I said it. Like, that's going in.
I thought the same thing. Like, I've made mistakes. And I'm like, oh, Jonathan will fix that in post. And then I literally hear myself on the recording say, Jonathan will fix that in post. And he did not. So there you go.
Well, I think there's a good reason why, because if he edits it out, he's going to make you sound smarter. If he doesn't, he's going to make us sound smarter relative to you.
I don't know if I really need editing help there. Like that. You guys got this.
I have you know, Ryan, I did not edit some things together and put it at the end of the show like I was going to last time.
He's saving it for another day.
Yeah, exactly. It's a thinly veiled threat.